Okay, good to go.
Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of the Thrive and Survive Research Hub. As usual, I'm joined with my partner here, Alex. Alex, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very excited for today's guest.
Cool. And we have a very special guest, Giovanni Abrahams. I'll obviously introduce him as we go. But Gio, how you doing?
Morning tonight, morning Alex. I'm excellent, thanks guys. Always blessed.
Cool, I can see it. You look rather fresh for early Saturday morning.
Most definitely today.
Yeah, so obviously to get right into it, just a brief intro. So Gio and I come a long way. Obviously a very big part of my life. You know, one of my mentors, great friend, also family and um, godfather to my daughter. Outside of that, Gio also has an amazing life or success story, considering where he's come from and where he is now. And in today's episode, we just want to dive into the mind of Gio to maybe take some lessons and some gems around what has gotten him to where he is today. So with that being said, Gio, welcome. And I'm going to dive right into the first question. And the question is centered around self-leadership. And I'm very curious to know, how do you govern yourself? What are some of the things that you consider when governing yourself, particularly because of the role that you play, not only in the life of your family, but in the lives of those you lead at work and also in the community from a religious perspective?
Cool. Thanks today. So if I just reflect upon roughly the last 14 years, I believe my journey started with the right people in mind. So I've had some contributors that has really added their flavor and value. And it has brought me to the conclusion that on your journey of life, you need a few partners. One important partner is a spiritual guide, someone that's always there, that you can knock on their door when the journey gets tough, when you get tempted, or when there's some real spiritual issues, heart set, soul set, mindset issues to deal with. A good spouse and partner is someone that supports you through times of difficulties, because there's always some conversations that you have to have going home, and and making some sacrifices around kids and family and wife and spouse, etc. You need a good mentorship, good sponsors, and then good political connections that helps you understand your your macro environment and what happens around you. I, in a sense, have been very fortunate around the mentorship and the sponsor space. I had a mentor that I worked with in around 2008 and then again in 2016. And these people invariably has contributed towards my life and my journey in their own different ways. If I think back, I remember the my manager at the time, or my leader at the time, who gave me my first opportunity as a manager and to lead another group of people. And over time, myself and him has continued to maintain that relationship. And he stayed in my life, and he gave me my first break. And after that, there are two or three other names I can mention. But one of the most significant contributors in my life would be Rob. Rob spent some time and sat me down and really helped me build and craft my path around where I wanted to go. And it started with something as basic as a life plan.
Mm.
So I really undervalued the importance of that conversation. But 10 years away from that conversation with Rob now, I'm able to draw the links and I'm able to understand how pivotal that conversation was. So, and I share this methodology with all my mentees, and it's very simple. So I start with what my end goal is in terms of qualifications, in terms of position I'd like to hold, in terms of salary, then some family goals around wife, kids, how much I want to earn, what I want to have achieved by then, which organizations I would like to have offered my time with in terms of volunteer work, and then you work your way backwards from there. So when I did a shot at my life around where I wanted to go, I was 24, 25 at the time, and I went forward 25 years. So I went to 50 and I plotted what my goal was, and I broke from 50. I worked backwards and I broke it up in 5-year gaps. And as soon as I got to around the age of 35, sorry, I then broke it up into 2-year gaps and then 1-year gaps. And you undervalue what a year can do in your life. You definitely do. But through that time and through plotting that, I was able to sort of plan my journey of my life, of where I wanted to go, how I wanted to get there. And what was important for me was to also take stock, to sit down and to do some important things and thinking around what are my enablers, what are my levers, and how do I go and look for those enablers and levers, and how do I make those links with important people? I'll use a basic example. Some things I wanted to fix about myself was I identified at the time that I had very little industry links, and I didn't know a lot of people who I was able to draw from like a wellspring, you know, and go and say, what are you doing in your bit of the organization? How can I learn from you? And it was important for me to then develop those links. And I spent significant time in the HR space working with people and developing those links and maintaining them. The next aspect I looked at was I looked at myself and I sort of, you know, one can be very unkind with the conversations you have with yourself
Yeah.
and very difficult and say things to yourself that really brings you down.
Yep.
But I needed to also control that conversation internally and look at the things in my own life that I thought was good. And I'll give you a basic example. Uh, I worked on my vocabulary. My vocabulary at some point was very flat because I'm from Port Elizabeth, and I was born and raised there. I had the privilege of attending Linkside High. My parents, you know, saw me through that, and then I sort of got lost a little bit, and I didn't do much studying in the beginning. And I thought, I want to really build that vocabulary base around words, what I can use, what I can't use. And I've over time have spent the time to enculturate that. And most importantly, it's about the reflection. So I've gone back and reflected my plan. And you can always plan and often it won't work, right? You're going to face obstacles and you'll stumble on the path of life. But it's important to always take a dipstick and say, where am I at? And I do that every 3 months. I also take this plan and I set it up on my wall and I would look at it very often in terms of affirmations and the conversations that I have with myself to remind myself of where I'm going. About 6 years ago, met a very influential lady that gave me one of the most powerful tools in my life. And she said to me, write down why you do what you do. Because in times when it gets tough, you can go back and you can read that. Also, write down the principles of who you are and who you want to be, so that you're able to, in times of toughness, when you get tested, when things get really rough, you're able to look at who you said you wanted to be, those principles, and where you wanted to go and why you're doing what you're doing. And that has kept me centered on my path of life and also helped me drive where I wanted to go. Another very, very important thing that I believe that in our community is very undervalued is through working with one of my coaches. We shared a joke once. And when I started on the journey with him and signed the confidentiality agreement, etc., because he's registered with Comensa South Africa, he said to me that I'm probably one of the most tested people that he has met. So I've done CCP testing, personality testing, shadow matches, to get a full-on understanding of my mental capability, to get a full-on understanding of where I am, where I operate, and what my stretch targets can be. And from that base, through working with those mentors, I've been able to unpack my own capability to seek for the opportunities and hunt and look at what I could do better with myself mentally, as well as from a personality perspective, how I respond to stress, how I respond in difficult situations, what are my best environments to work in? Are they unstructured environments? Are they structured environments? Am I a visionary thinker? Am I someone who's able to build or break businesses? Am I someone who's able to maintain? So you have to have that deep and rich understanding of yourself and context before you are able to build yourself to move forward, because you may just find yourself in a position where you become unhappy after 10, 14 years of a career. If I can use a basic example, I started working in logistics in 2008, and I started working in logistics in 2008 because of a need. Because this it was all centered around what my background was. My parents was 43 when I was born to them, so the last of five, and my journey, whilst my story is not unique, how I've built my story over the years has been because we all live in a South African context, right?
Of course.
We all have the same challenges,
Yep.
but how we overcome those challenges is what makes our story different.
Yep.
And I always tell most of my mentees, as well as a lot of guys I help prep for interviews, your backstory is one of the most powerful things that you get to share with others, especially when you try to sell yourself. Because that first 15 to 30 seconds in the interview, if you hound that backstory and you condense it into the most powerful story that your interview panel can connect with, you've got them for the next hour. So that's significantly with my mentees where I choose to work. And that backstory for me is what is important to craft. When I look at a lot of young adults today, and I work in the mentorship space with Allan Grey Orbis Foundation, I do some work in other areas where I speak to young graduates coming out of university, deciding where they want to go, crafting a career path. The challenge is very often we respond to a need. So our parents send us to university, we study, we start working because money is required to be able to gain access to other things in life. As a consequence of that, you compromise your own personal life goals, right? And not no reflection on my parents. They made difficult sacrifices for me. They've contributed to significantly to where I am today, and I can only but be grateful for that and thank God for what they've done. But being as that may be, I started working out of a need, and that was the financial need.
Yep.
Now, 14, 16 years down the line, I look at my life and I go, maybe this is not really what I wanted to do. And I'm taking stock. I've had the privilege of being on sabbatical now for a little while, and I've gone through the same process I've just explained to you. I've gone and reconnected with my base and my foundation. And I've sat down and I've gone back to the testing and I've read all of those things, my Enneagram testing, to understand what the Enneagram actually said are my capabilities and where I am. The Myers-Briggs testing I did, the CCP testings, all of that data. And I've sat and I've looked at that data, and I've proverbially gone and looked at my life plan, and in certain instances it's been a hit and a miss, but for the most part of it, I've been able to achieve, through the grace of God and the support of my family, the most of my goals. But now for me, what's important is the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And I've sat over the past while just crafting that. And that's sort of the message that I share with all the young ones is break the societal norm and the shell. Go and sit down and reflect. It's difficult for you to reflect upon something that you don't know, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. But that's why we need help. That's why we need mentors and sponsors to sit down with us and say, where are you? That's why we need qualified, trained psychologists and mentors and psychometric testers that's able to sit down with us and say, but this is your capability. This is where we can see you go. And very often, being your subject choices, if you look at our education system, and I've been through the same challenge, which is why I'm as passionate about people's development as I am, and working with the young professionals, is that you're required to make a subject choice in grade 10.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I've been out of school for a number of years.
It doesn't look it.
Yeah, he looks young, eh?
Thanks, Samuel. But you're required to do subject choices in grade 10, right? You hardly know yourself at that point, right?
Yeah.
You hardly know what capabilities you have, who you can be, your potential. It's then dependent on on the quality of parents you have, right? Who's going to sit down and say, what resources and capabilities do we have available at hand to help our son or daughter to understand what they're really good at, to understand what their
Mm.
capabilities are, and how do we help unlock that capability for the next generation
Yep.
to get the quickest and fastest start that they possibly can. Because the wrong
Mm.
choice at that point in time could set you back 10, 14 years.
Yeah.
100%.
And you could go down the wrong track. You could be miserable. You could become a CEO. You could completely fail at it.
Yep.
And there's very little people, or in my humble view, there are very little individuals in life who take that moment for introspection to say, what has gotten me here?
Mm.
Have I because as you grow and develop through life, your character, your mind, everything else is I compare it to a block of cheese, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking at my block of cheese going, if you look at a block of feta, where are the holes? And how do
Mm.
I identify the holes?
Yeah.
Mm.
And how do I proverbially plug that hole to make a beautiful sculpture of who I am?
Yep.
So that
Mm.
on the day when I pass, people can look at people can stand at my funeral and do my obituary and say, the guy I met 15, 20 years ago is a different guy from the guy that is the body that's here today.
Yep.
Mm.
I have witnessed a transformation and a constant introspection, seeking and growth, and that's helped me in my life too. If I roll back the tape and I say, what would I like people to say about me? That's
Mm.
that's proverbially the all-encompassing message I'm looking for, and I strive and I work every day to attempt to achieve that, and I fall short very, very often, but it's about identifying the opportunity. Yeah. I hope I've answered the question. I've taken a very long route, but yeah.
No,
Knocked
no, 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 no,
out of the
no.
park.
You hit that out of the park, and I mean, this is why this session is there, right? It's like I said, we used to journal, but we feel that the best way to document wisdom is to record it. I mean, we're in the digital age now, and we need to move with the moving times. So I think your answer was very conclusive, and it's obviously sparked a lot of more questions that I have. But before I move on to those questions, I just want to mention, as you were speaking about your life journey, obviously, I'm not sure if you know Alex's age. Alex obviously is a bit younger than us, but I was fortunate enough to witness him make that mental switch whereby he had obviously worked so hard to become a CA and one day just decided, no. So Alex, I'd love for you just to maybe talk on that, and obviously based on what Gia said,
Yeah.
maybe express some of the feelings that you went through and obviously share some wisdom around why you made that switch, right? Because this is a background thing. This is an
Mm.
upbringing. You
Yeah.
spoke about making your subject choice in grade 10 and then your parents looking at resources and saying, what can we do to leapfrog you and take you 10 years ahead? Can you
Yeah.
speak to some of those decisions? And obviously, yes, it was good and it's a blessing, but can you speak to some of the reasons why you went back on those great decisions your environment made for you?
Look, obviously, I'll try and keep it concise because this episode's not about me. But I think something you said there, as a young person, it's important to have a vision for what you want in your life. And I don't think we get taught that. We actually get disencouraged that from a young age because when you're young, it's natural to say, I want to be this, I want to be that. When I was 10, I wanted to be a game ranger. When I was 15, I wanted to be a police officer. And every
Yeah.
time I said I wanted to do that, I kind of heard that's not a good career choice because it's not lucrative. So when I reached that point in my life at 17, 18, where I had to pick a career path, it was like my dad was an accountant, my mom was a magistrate. So it was accounting or it was law because we know these things work. And the problem is accounting, to do it right, it's a 7-year journey. So it's quite a big commitment. So I signed up for it at that age and I didn't really think too much about it because I was in an environment where, when you study accounting, you're surrounded by people that think it's a good idea. So your environment is reinforcing that decision. And when I was in my last year of my articles, I passed my board exams, I'd done everything. I kind of realized, I don't know if this is what I want for myself. I looked at the people that were 10 years ahead of me, 15 years ahead of me. And honestly, they didn't strike me to be that happy. They didn't have a lot of fulfillment in the work that they were doing. and it forced me to ask myself some very difficult questions. And I started working with a life coach around my second year of articles. So I was maybe 22. And, you know, it's funny, you were talking about mentorship and people challenging your views and asking you these types of questions. That was a big thing for me, a big tool for me, where they asked me like, okay, well, you know, if you had a paintbrush and a blank canvas, what kind of picture would you paint for yourself in your life? So yeah, I finished my articles. I decided to go and work somewhere else. And I had a moment of introspection where I asked myself, what am I doing this for? Like, you know, this is the most time I'm going to have in my life, in my 20s. This is when I need to be taking risks. So yeah, not to go too much into all the details, but I flipped the switch, I changed things up, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, one thing I can pick up, I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to obviously be in the situation that you guys are, because obviously I started my career in banking, but it took me 1 week to realize that, you know, and I took my own route.
Yeah.
But you know what I find really inspiring around what Gio was speaking about, and something that you do quite a lot, Alex, and just to break down Gio's answer, I asked him about, you know, self-leadership. And when he spoke about self-leadership, he was selfless in the sense that he referred to mentors and coaching.
Mm,
He then went on to speaking about a life plan. And
yeah.
based on your life plan, focusing on reflection, introspection, and growth.
Yes.
And you know, like I think when a lot of us look at life and a lot of us look at what we want to achieve, we only focus on the end goal. We
Yeah.
leave all these other important facts and points that Gio has mentioned that actually take you to where you need to go. And therefore, when you focus on the destination, you do everything you need to do, neglecting yourself and your purpose
Yeah.
and what makes you happy.
Yep.
And like Gio mentioned, you get to the end of this road and you're like, I'm not happy,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And that leads me on to my next question for you, Gio. You know, I know that you do a lot, not only for your family, but for the community. I mean, you're one of the youngest Catholic deacons in the country. You're an Accenture Rising Star Awards winner. You became an executive in your early 30s, and you serve the church and the sick, you know? And I find that very impressive because alongside that, you have a very successful corporate career and you're a very good father and husband to your family. What is your life philosophy? What brings you to not only focus on your family, but encompass everyone else around you?
Look, I think thanks for that question, Tineiwo. I believe that that has changed over the years. And if I can take you through, if I can just for a brief moment take you through the transition process. So back to Alex's answer, I'd like to just loop into that a little bit. When I started my career, so if you go and you look and you research me or you check my profile out on LinkedIn, you'll see that for at least the first 10 years of my life, I was unqualified. So I studied much like you, Alex, didn't go to that extent. I studied a national diploma in cost and management accounting in around 2005. I then left Port Elizabeth and started going to work in different areas in the country, right? And and just to build up my base, and I went where the work took me, so that I was able to build my CV. And and it is through meeting my spouse that she drove me to finalize my national diploma, which eventually became and
Mm,
many qualifications later, and through the right levels of support and and determination and resetting my internal clock, I've been able to be where I am today. But that picture, like Alex mentioned earlier, and me constantly painting that picture has evolved over time. So in the beginning, it was about in the beginning for me, it was about excuse me. In the beginning for me, it was about money.
mm,
It was about what I determined success to look like, and that success for me was things, right? It was the car, the BMW, the big house,
Sure.
the fancy clothes, the Louis Vuittons,
Yeah.
not, and don't get me wrong. Don't get
Those
me
things are
wrong at all.
nice.
Not that I'm saying, sorry.
I said those things are nice. You can't lie.
It's true, true. Don't get me wrong. Not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong with that. Having great things is cool, right? And it's nice. Like Oprah Winfrey says, having good shoes and a closet full of it
Yeah, exactly.
is great.
Yeah.
But that for me was the focus for at least the first 8 years.
Mm.
And and over time, I looked at that and I asked myself the question, because going through that, I started making that the center of my life. As a consequence of that, there were people whom I robbed of the opportunity to experience the real me.
Mm.
Mm.
And and I didn't show up for a number of people, right? And these conversations started happening with me. And life is a beautiful thing, right? Sorry.
No worries.
Mm.
Life is a beautiful thing, right? So if you look at sorry, let me just have a drink of water.
Go
Bless
for
you,
it.
bless you.
So life is a beautiful thing, right? You may go on this journey of life and you may think that you on this out on your own and you won't take time to proverbially go look at that block of cheese and come back and fix those holes.
Mm.
But there's a concept called in my life at least there's a concept called divine providence.
Mm.
And and God is in your life in a primary way or in a secondary way,
Mm.
whichever way you choose or believe. And he will reach down in your life with his hand and make proverbially correct you when you're off the path,
Yep.
sort of like what we do in leadership when we work with people. We don't force
Mm.
our way. We have a tendency where we guide, ask questions, send
Yes.
signs, and he'll help you fix those problems that you to get you through, that you are blind to or that you aren't able to see. Puts the right people in your path, helps you have the right conversations. And over time, for me, this concept has developed now to something
Mm.
completely different.
Mm.
I am in a space where the last 8 weeks of reflection has also given me time to recraft that narrative. What that narrative means for me now is is balance, right?
Yeah.
And if you allow me to explain that for a little bit. So if you go back and you research the theology of work and you go and really unpack the Adam and Eve story and what happened in that space without making it too long. The purpose of the theology of work was actually to restore dignity to humankind. So
Mm.
the impact of that was if you go back and you connect with what work was farming, work was for you to be able to grow crops for your family, to water that crops, to harvest, to be able to feed your family, right? And then every day, the intention was to go home and to celebrate your day's work and to
Mm.
be proud and to proverbially sit with a cup of coffee and to reflect upon the physical work you've done for the day to say, I've harvested X amount of crop,
Yep.
Mm.
wheat or maize. I've planted X amount and I'll fertilize this ground, I'll till the soil, and I'll continue to weather the storms for the next 3 or 4 months before I'm allowed to harvest again. So if you connect with that, you then start to understand the importance of how work has evolved over time for us.
Mm.
We now deal with different things. We deal with stresses of life. We deal with difficult bosses. We deal with good bosses. We deal with shareholder requirements from us, returns on investment. We deal with
Mm.
KPIs. All of these things. What's my EBITDA number? What's my ROIC?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did you people are throwing quirky comments at you and industry jargon around what you need, right?
Right.
Mm.
And then through that process, stress then eventually mounts.
Yeah.
And it causes you to naturally evolve outside of yourself to a point where if you allow it to get out of control, over a period of time you won't recognize yourself.
Yep.
Mm.
And and because you're on this constant adrenaline shot, right? And this is what COVID has taught me in my life over the last while. We've gotten fast at doing things because we're in
Yeah.
immediate need satisfaction society.
Yeah.
So if I want something, I switch on the TV,
Yeah.
Netflix is available to me. If I feel that I need something else, someone take a lot, I'm ordering
Yeah.
it, it comes to
Yeah.
me, it's delivered, or whatever the platform may be, take a lot, Amazon, whatever. I'm not doing any marketing for any of them.
Yeah.
So, we have this response, this mental response to dopamine, that whatever we want is available to us, and we
Mm,
determine what we want when we want it. We no
mm.
longer have that patience of saying, this process takes time.
Yeah.
It takes reflection, it takes effort, it takes hard work, the sweat of your brow, the strength in your
Yes.
back, right?
Yes.
So now when I sit back and I look at it, I change my view. And the reason why I'm taking you the long way is because I'm saying, for me, now it's about balance. It's about making sure that whatever I can achieve, I connect with the theology of work is supposed to be able to restore the dignity of human beings.
Mm.
So every day for me, reporting to the office or going back, I understand when I treat people, when I work with people, how I respond to people. It's my goal, my vision, and my dream that they are able to feel that sense of respect and dignity from me in how I respond to situations
Yeah.
and how I
Mm,
handle situations, in the sense that people feel valued, they feel that they heard.
mm.
Because at the end of the day, when you talk to somebody, invariably they walk away and they test for understanding. The testing of that understanding is for two things. And Oprah Winfrey says this. One, did you hear what I said? And two, did you value it?
Yeah.
Mm.
That's what human beings are about. That's essentially why we
Yes.
gossip, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's essentially why we tell stories, right? I know
Yes.
this about Tineiwo, and
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
so
Yes. Yeah.
if you go back with the psychological, with the psyche of why we do that, the woke term is trauma dump. My nephew introduced me to that. So we have a tendency where we do that, and it's because we want to connect with people,
Yeah.
and we want to use knowledge as currency. So for me, when I go back and I craft this vision of what it's about balance. It's about making sure I show up in the right way for whomever I choose to sell my services to,
Mm-hmm.
because we also need to just proverbially challenge how we look at work. Work is
Yes.
no longer transactional. For your parents, for my parents, Alex, for your parents, work was, they had a matric, they had to show up, they got a paycheck, they sometimes got a bonus. Often they sometimes got an increase and it was stagnant, but that's how it was, right? And I speak under correction. Apologize if I make any assumptions with regards to any of your guys, parents, but that's sort of for my parents how it was. It
Mm.
was transactional. They went to work, they got money, they came home, they delivered this money to be able to give us access to things.
Yeah.
Why we work today is a very, very different concept. We work for quality of life.
Yeah.
We don't
Mm.
work because we want money.
Yeah.
We
Mm.
work because as much as, and I don't know if I can categorize myself as a millennial. My nephew often tells me I can't, even though I'm an 86er. But
Okay.
you know, we work for flexibility. We want to be able to be next to the field.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not every day. I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to have an entitlement mentality. But that moment when my daughter expects me to show up to be next to the field to watch the hockey or the netball, I want to be able to be there in peace,
Spot on.
right?
Yes.
I
In
want to be able to
peace.
show up. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to
Yeah.
show up and be present in the moment with everything I do, so that people can recognize that I'm not on the side of the field coaching, straddling the line
Yeah.
on the phone,
Yeah.
fielding calls, trying to just balance a burning building. Because then my fireman is really not doing their job, in all
Mm.
honesty, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the development of that over time has meant presence for my family, and making sure that I give my spouse, my wife, my daughters the presence that they need, that I'm able to also be there for them and cultivate their soil and their knowledge the same way I'm able to in my professional environment. That when I walk away from that space and I go to work and I sell my brand, because young people, you have a brand. You are all gold tomato sauce. You
Yes.
are Mrs. Ball's chutney.
Yeah.
Just get
Yes.
it out of your head about anything else. You sell a service, and it's important for you to, when you sell that service, to craft that service like Mrs. Balls, or like All Gold has spent time to craft and build a brand that's trusted, that someone can go to the counter, pay the 10 Rand and get the 1 liter of tomato sauce.
Yeah.
Your What you sell to any organization you work for works on exactly the same principle. You need to be out there on social media, crafting that brand, doing things in the background, being in the volunteer space, building relationships with people, giving back to others, while simultaneously developing your skill and understanding in your industry, right? So when I show up for those people who expect me to yield shareholder return, who expect me to yield ROIC and EBITDA and HEPS and every other thing under the sun that's under my KPI,
Yeah.
I want to be able to show up for them and be authentically there, not feeling bad that I wasn't a dad or a brother, right? On Sundays, when it is my duty to serve my community and to put on my alb and to show up at the altar, I want to be able to do that without stressing to look at my WhatsApps on my phone as to what has now happened, because I am now in my time of worship. I spent 6 days, I've tilled the soil. In my seventh day, I am choosing to honor the God that's given me everything in my life, in my humble view. So this opportunity needs to be granted to me to do this thing, you know? So over time, that has changed, and I've also challenged myself in terms of what is money, what is the value of money, and I listen to Warren Buffett. The one thing that's absolutely awesome to me is and sticks out is one of his quotes that says, "You will continue to be a slave to money unless you don't sleep and your money works for you."
Yeah.
And and again, it's a very it's a deep seated community shortcoming of my community. Those tools, that ability of how to, is not engendered, it's not entrenched, it's not intertwined in the fiber of youth, it's not shared at young nurturing age, so that we can make informed decisions, right? Because that, at the end of the day, today is really what leadership is about. Management, you have this much time to make a choice. Leadership, you have that much time to make the right choice and get on with it.
Yeah.
And proverbially do the Google thing, right? Let the ship out of
Yes.
the harbor and fix it while it's on the sea, because you need to get going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you allow this life to sweep you up into that, you then proverbially get into the hustle and bustle of things, and you're on this hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So I'm always sharing with people the importance of the triangle. Some people call it a triangle, others call it a square. And I'll close off with this. So in my triangle, or let's start with the triangle, then I'll add on the fourth part. So in the triangle, you'll always in your life experience a sense of tension. You'll experience a sense of tension of whatever you determine to or recognize as being your maker, whether whatever that institution may be. For me, that is Jesus as a Christian. So there's that expectation of God from you, as to say, who does Giovanni need to be? Then there's the expectation from Giovanni around, what do I want to be for myself, right? Then there's the expectation of, what does others expect from me? That's the basic triangle. And there's always a tension that exists in that space, right? If you want to break up what others expect of me, why it becomes a square in my view, I break it up into internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, family and friends and co-workers, right? Because they invariably expect different things from you. They don't expect you to show up the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why for me it becomes a square, right? So you always have to find balance in whether you call it a square or a triangle, to keep these expectations in, and it's never going to be in perfect harmony. If you look at a graph, often the graph with the center, it pulls out of sync every now and then.
Yeah.
But that goes back to reflection that you mentioned earlier, and the life plan, to go back and say, who am I? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Is to keep that triangle or that square, all those lines roughly the same length, because at some point if you allow the one to go out of sync of the other, you're going to compromise who you are. And a consequence of that is you're going to let people get in your head. right?
Mm.
They are then going to set upon you their expectations, which then becomes a cross that you will carry, which either will become too heavy. And Alex,
Mm.
respectfully, like you said earlier, you've chosen not to do it.
Yeah.
So the cross will become too heavy, you become rebellious, and you either get some people who actually just carry the cross and get on with it and see life as a complete and utter burden and spend time being unhappy, and they're just really negative human beings,
Yeah.
with all
Mm.
due respect.
Yeah.
Or you
Mm.
get people who look at the cross and go, I don't feel like carrying this thing. It's not me. I need to break this chain. But and then you also get some who look at it and don't understand why the cross is heavy because they don't do the introspection. But it's always important to go and work on that triangle and say, how do I keep this thing in check? How do I
Mm.
how do I compromise sometimes with the one and whilst giving the other what they want, but also, bringing it back into its natural state?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I not let what all these elements are overpower me to a point where I become an uncentered person, right? Because it's very easy. Alex, you may say to me, but Gio, I don't like the way you talk. I don't like how you look. You know, for me, that feedback now, I go and internalize it. I spend 4 days on it. I
Yeah.
become negative.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm in Burberry. I'm resetting my whole look. I'm walking out on the street and I'm like, I'm a new
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then everyone's looking at me going, I
What the
think
hell?
Gio's going through a midlife crisis. When in
Yeah.
fact, when in fact that's not really the truth. It's just I received some feedback I didn't know how to deal with. I let it get in my head and it had the capability to sink my ship.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's proverbially why people would look at CEOs and go and very high level leadership on exco and directorship level and say, but these guys don't listen to us.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a fine balance between listening to what the people want and crafting and driving the vision to where the people wants to be, because it's like that
Mm.
picture of the ladder, right?
Yeah.
The guy stands at the top of the ladder, he sees over the wall, and he can't explain to the guy standing at the bottom here what he sees.
Exactly.
But the guy
100%.
the guy on the ground has got to believe the message the guy's giving him, the other one that's on the wall, to say, okay, cool, if I support you, it makes sense. And if I follow you, we'll go together.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the issue of the triangle, is to just always keep it in balance. And that for me is the philosophy of where I really like to drive my life.
Wow.
Also,
Wow. What an answer. And I mean, I'd like to unpack that, obviously leading on to the next question. One thing that really stuck out for me there was the differences in why millennials work versus our parents.
yeah.
And you mentioned their quality of life. And when you mentioned quality of life, I also picked up the responsibility to become the improving generation.
Yeah.
So like, I think like now I'm a recent parent, you're a parent as well. You always want your child to be safe, to be good. But that be safe, be good is a reflection of your experience. But as they grow up and they get a more accurate view of the world, they then see your flaws and see the weaknesses in your good.
Yeah.
And as they get older, they then rebel. And I can speak for myself in my life. I grew up, I started my job in a bank under my dad, and within a week, I was like, I'm not doing this. His reputation was on the stake. I mean, there's so many things. And I was like, I'm not doing this because I see better.
Yeah.
This is good for you, but I see better in my life. And now, 10 years down the line, he couldn't celebrate me more than he could, right? And he's so proud. And he's like, thank you for pushing back because now you've shown me a better side and I trust you now to become the better version of me.
Mm.
Alex, the same. I wouldn't lie. I was part of the naysayers when Alex was like, I'm leaving. I encouraged it. I was like, do what you need to do. But I was also like,
What are you doing?
I don't know about this. Eh? you know, I was on the scared side
Yeah.
because I had just seen this is good. Your parents have set you up, etc. And he faced the challenge himself. And internally, he's now in this situation. The
Mm.
future will behold and tell us what happens. But at the end of the day, he made that decision. So I really like that answer because it just speaks to the responsibility of when you become conscious, you want to be the better version of the generation. And with that being said, Alex, I'd love for you to add a comment based on your thoughts, based on what Gio gave there.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, I think it's a natural evolution of of humanity when the next generation has a different life to the previous one. You know, just ask yourself what kind of world your parents, your grandparents lived in, and the parents that they had, and so forth and so forth. You know, it's like a very stupid example, but simple. My dad, when me and my brother were naughty, he beat us with a belt, and we deserved it,
Yeah.
100% every time.
Yeah.
You know, there were
I think
times
that's
that
for all of us I think that's for all of us on this
yeah,
call, eh?
yeah, there were times that
Get the
we didn't
call.
get bliksemed and we
All of
should
us
have
on this
been,
call.
you know. But there's a lot of people of this generation that wouldn't do that to their kids just because they've had a different life. And if you speak to my dad and you ask him about the stuff that his dad did to him, you would be like, put that oak in jail, you know? Um, and so, like I'm
Yeah.
saying, like the world is evolving in a way, and we should honor the previous generations for the success of what they've done, because
100%.
that's the world they've left for us, you know? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, look, if I can tie into that, that's you are so correct, Alex, when you say that's evolution. So Tineiwo mentioned it earlier. So my wife and I have the privilege of teaching marriage prep to to all the young to all the young candidates who want to enter into the vocation of marriage.
Mm.
And one of the basic principles that we teach them is that, and evolution in a sense does the same. Your wife and a wife and husband come together, they both come from two different homes. And they come with different sets of values, different sets of understanding, different sets of principles. And as you join in one union, you then bring both that together. And between the two of you, you have to make critical decisions about what do you discard,
Yeah.
what doesn't function for you and you discard, and what functions for you that will hold, but also principally what you would determine to be new values. And and if you
Wow.
take that amongst, and that's basically how traditions in families start, right? So
Yeah.
if you compare that metaphor to our lives and how we are, we proverbially go through the same process. And we look at our parents and we have a tendency to sort of project ourselves either outside of their framework, or we're happy with the framework and we stick to it.
Yeah.
But again, I believe that balance would be to also have a sense of acceptance and understanding. Because
Yes.
it's very easy to say my dad or my mom made the wrong decision.
Sure.
It's it's a lot more complex to have an understanding of the history, to have an understanding of the context,
Yeah.
and to have an understanding of the culture at the time when the decision was made, to
100%.
respect that, to say that, sure, maybe at the time this was the best decision,
Yeah.
because that was the
Yes.
micro environment
Yes.
in which they were in that led to that decision. and
100%.
and that I'll continue to respect my parents for that. And if
Yes.
I am in the same challenge going forward, I can learn differently and adapt according to where I need to be, according to where I am. So
Yeah. Well
Wow.
said.
Wow.
Well
And I
said.
like the word that you guys both use there, creating new values, new cultures, right? And I think it sits with the responsibility of the new generation to make the old generation understand that I'm not rebelling, I am improving, but to do it so in such a way that they understand and that they follow. You know, like I come from a very African family, you know, and like I'll give an example.
Oh, see, I'm just frozen there. Okay, we'll just give it a mo. I told you this was gonna happen. We had
I
this
think his
last
load
time.
shedding's probably
Sorry,
coming back.
sorry,
Yeah,
yeah, that's my sorry, guys.
you're
So
back.
yeah, I was saying, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm back. I was saying I come from a very African family, and like changing diapers is not something that is done. You know, like it's something that's actually frowned upon. But I do it, you know, and now my family is becoming accustomed to it. I see some of my uncles doing it.
There you
You
go.
know, like leaving work to go attend your child's baptism or changing your business day trip because you need to go do this. Work was always first and then family comes second, but it's about creating those new cultures and then through effectively communicating it respectively to the older generation, creating a following and then improving the generation altogether. So that's what I pick up from both of you. And I think Joe, you explained that so well. It sits with us, but it needs to be done with context and understanding and respect. Yes, Joe.
Sorry, if I could just add, you've mentioned a very interesting fact there, and it's given me just a brief moment to reflect on something that I carry very dearly in my heart. So I believe that professionally as well as commercially, privately, we sit at the cusp of a changing time, right?
Mm.
And if you go back and you reflect, you'll see that we're almost there and thereabouts. And without sounding ageist, I've been accused of sounding ageist in this view, and I apologize for that. But if you look at it, there is this there's this tension now in the workplace and in your families also that exists between generations. We now have found ourselves labeling generations: baby boomers, Gen Zs, millennials, X, Ys, and Zs. And the challenge with this now is that you have you have the Gen Zs and the millennials in the workspace, and very often in the families also, trying to be taken up into the hierarchy, right? Absorbed or given an opportunity, if I can clarify, taken up to sort of get entrance into, or the rite of passage, right? Where you now have a boomer, a proverbial boomer, that
Mm.
sits in a leadership role in either the family or the the organization, right? The challenge that this creates is that the narrative is a stark representation of what life was and is in opposition to each other. So
Mm.
when you look at the narrative for a boomer, it's been a predominant half, without it sounding very disrespectful, a predominant half of boomers are matriculated because at the time having a matric was the coolest thing under the sun.
Yeah.
A few of them, due to leadership opportunities and studies and access and opportunities, studied. But if you go do in my view, without knowing the statistics, if you go do a random lookup, right, you'll see that matric was about there and thereabouts was the achievement at the time.
Sure.
Mm.
Whereas when you look at it now, and coupled with that matric, also then went the narrative of hard work, time in seat, taking your time to go up the chain,
Mm.
slower rates of learning
Yep.
because the
Mm.
access of information
Was
was
less.
reduced.
Yep.
So there was no Internet of Things. If I needed
Mm.
to service my car, it was a trial and error thing. I couldn't go on YouTube to just go
Yeah.
and check how to change my brakes, or I needed to phone somebody, or I needed to travel by foot to the next village or area, wherever that
Yeah.
might be, without it sounding too primitive, to try and find the solution from somebody who knows who knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I find myself in a space where I'm in charge of the leadership of the organization, but I now have to lead younger generations that
And all.
their education system is. Remember the day when having a degree was cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you introduce yourself and you're like, I have a degree, people are like, oh, shame. You know?
That's
And
normal.
then
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then they're like, so what happened to the
What else?
MBA?
Yeah.
You
What
know?
else?
You know? So now you go to school, you have a different level of education, number one. Not that that makes you any more superior than the boomer, right? Please don't get me wrong.
No.
But you also now have a different level of exposure. So you have the Internet of Things. Things are available to you. When you want to see what you want to see, it's there. It sort of cultivates a different expectation in your mind around what the world should be
Yeah.
Mm.
versus the person that controls the world now, proverbially controls the world, right? Because
Mm.
if we were in an organization and Alex, you were the eldest and you were a boomer, you would be controlling myself in Tineiwo's world,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
would be the entrant graduate into the system, right? I believe to stop the stigma, right? And to stop the constant bickering and the fighting and a lot of these articles that you see in the news 24 around Gen Zs, they spoiled, the boomers feel this way,
Yeah.
all of the various opinions floating up and down, the great resignation, all of that. We have to develop a sense of understanding for where either one of the two are
Yes.
and craft an organization, a family, a structure, a church, a community that actually caters to both ends of that.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, you're invariably going to get people who either decides to jump ship and leave to areas where the adoption rate has been at a more rapid speed than the proverbial unwatered grass, right?
Yeah.
And if you speak to just about any young generation person today, I sort of feel like I'm in the middle between the two things. And when I look at it, I sort of I sort of develop the view that we are at a change now
Yeah.
because there needs to be an opportunity to open doors for the youth, to open doors for the youth to grow, to get exposure, because it is those graduates that are meant to be the CEOs of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And yes, they may not take the time and the bums in seats, but their rate of learning is significantly more accelerated than the rate of learning which someone would
Definitely.
have experienced, in sitting in the seat for as long as they have.
Yeah.
And to close off, just because the one rule that I believe COVID has taught us is that your experience is something that if you've got 20, 15 years of experience, there's a portion of that that needs to be thrown out of the window because of the fourth industrial revolution that's upon us, the
Yeah.
change, and the ever rapid growing requirement for even internal development. I mean,
Yeah.
I read a study from one of the universities in my EDP, I can't remember in quote, but my EDP I recently did, and it speaks about how do you retrain the individual to have a skill that's relevant in the next 5 years,
Yeah.
which then means when we sit and we look at ourselves and we look at those above us, we all have skills that at some point in the next 3 to 5
Inspired.
years is going to be obsolete.
100%. Yeah.
Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on this. You were talking about this interplay between these different generations and the tension between the multiple generations. I think communication is very important. And I wanted to link in a book that I read, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It's one of my favorite books. And one of the principles on interpersonal relationships is seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? And I think having a sense of humility and respect helps a lot in these situations. If I look at when I was at my audit firm, when I did my articles, we had such a cool dynamic where you've got an audit team where you have a partner that's like 50, an AD that's 42, manager that's like 35, assistant manager that's 27, and then a whole crowd of just 20-year-olds, and everyone's got a different skill, a different value that they bring to the table. And the whole thing only works when everybody is
Yes.
playing their role. And I think that's a great microcosm of the world today. And where things are failing are where you have the young generation that looks at the old generation with a little bit of disdain, where they say, you don't even know how your phone works. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah.
And then the old
100%.
people say, well, you can't drive anywhere without Google Maps. So you can't even change your tire.
Yeah.
So the only
And
way
I
we
think
can navigate it well is if we have these different generations coming to the table and saying, listen, I think you've got something to add. I want to learn from you.
And I think, Alex, you broke that down quite well, eh? And I'm not going to mention the organization that I work for, but like the role that I play is one of cross-functional leadership, where I'm telling a story, like Gio mentioned, the guy on top of the ladder who can see over the wall. And you have people at the bottom saying, but it's so small, it's not relevant, etc. However, I'm reporting into a very senior, experienced executive team, 20 years plus, who've already been sold this vision at a global level, so they understand it. And now the challenge that I have now is selling it to everyone else below who cannot necessarily see over the wall. But the secret to my success, that I believe, has been effective communication. And I think it starts off, like Gio said, with the organization creating a platform where effective communication can happen and a platform where the leaders listen. So I'm lucky enough to be, firstly, in a company that is the oldest family, one of the oldest family businesses in the world. It's over 100 years old. And the business is run like a family business. We're not even called employees, we're called associates. and the culture is very much like a family. The executives sit in different spots. One day you're sitting next to the GM, another day eating lunch with the cleaner. And that structure of bureaucracy is there, but you don't feel it because everyone is socially integrated and everyone's opinions are heard. And like Gio said, the labeling of millennials, Gen Zs, baby boomers doesn't exist.
No,
So I think, like you guys both mentioned, it's about creating the environment that facilitates good conversations so that there's this perfect synergy going on. But the reality is that it's not happening in 80% of organizations.
exactly.
And that's where the stifle is. And that's why there's all these articles coming out, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Gio?
And thanks, Tineiwo. And it breaks the barrier, right? I have a tendency to agree with you, Alex. Those sort of matrix structures and open leadership gives you the opportunity to have that 5 second or that 30-second elevator pitch that when you see the CEO
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
you're going on a ride for 2 floors down, what do you say? And to sort of count your words, right? So that your elevator pitch is the best that it can be. But my advice I always share to a lot of graduates whom I mentor is that the power of a graduate program is crazy, right?
Yeah.
If you think about what that unlocks for students, if you really work hard, you get the good grades, you come out, you get into the big organizations, and you get an opportunity to go into a graduate program, and they identify your skill, and they actually invest in you and build you.
Yeah.
So what I generally advise a lot of the graduates is before you just dive into a program because you want to do some research, go and see and understand how much graduates entered the program that actually still works in the organization,
Yeah.
right? And what opportunities were granted and given to them throughout that process that gave them the managerial skill, that gave them the supervisory skill. Because no doubt, I'm a full supporter of it. I started at the bottom. I was a customer services representative. At some point, I did picking in warehousing. At some point, I did checking. I drove a forklift. Those fundamentals are things you need. And you can't manage what you don't understand, right?
Exactly.
Well said.
And it's those are the building blocks of a successful leader. But that being said, it's that's sort of the mile markers I give the graduates, and I say, look at how much of them has stuck around. How many opportunities were created? Because there's some beautiful organizations that create these programs that you'll spend a year in receiving, you'll spend a year on the truck, you'll spend a year in management, and then you'll go from operational level to tactical level to strategic level. And then when you come down, they choose a spot for you depending on your competency, and they give you that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And and there's great South African organizations that's getting it right. I mean, if you're always surfing on LinkedIn or any of the platforms, you will know who the organizations are that on executive level they don't recruit externally. It's not heard of.
Yeah. I
And
think it's
and that's
common.
because
It's a
they
very common
believe,
thing.
yes, and that's because they believe in a basic principle called growing your own timber.
Yeah.
And and that's what I think what is the difference in the expectation between the millennial and the boomer. So like you mentioned earlier, Alex, the millennial says, I would like to know where I'm going because this is not a spontaneous journey between here to Bloemfontein and then we rock up in 4 days and you're like, we're in Bloem.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, before before I leave Joburg, I actually want to know, wait, do we go into Bloem? Okay, where are we going to sleep? Are we going to have something to eat?
Yeah.
You know, do I need to have pocket money? Is there something I need to do
Yeah.
to contribute differently? How do I help on the journey? You know,
Yeah.
and I think that's the difference in the career journey for a lot of people. The ones who are very seasoned, that 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 had the opportunities either seeked it out, so they went and looked for the people that they could go, hey, create an opportunity for me, right? And worked really hard at it and pushed on. And then there's some guys that were identified and went with the opportunity. But it's about that journey to say, all right, if I invest myself here for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, where is the investment of this journey going to go? Like putting your money in the bank. You want to know from the OK Investec before you give him the bar.
Exactly.
Listen, what's my rate of return going to be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well
I
said.
think that's so well said. And I mean, I think you answered my next two questions in there. But something I'd like to add in there, maybe this is more of a personal opinion, but I think you guys you feel free to comment, right? I also feel like once you are doing what fulfills your life purpose, so like for example, me, and I think we all share this and we practice it in our day-to-days. Number one, the opportunity to make a positive impact on other people's lives. Number two, the opportunity to teach. And then number three, the opportunity to help. I think if you can find yourself in an environment where you're doing those three,
Yeah.
then divine intervention, divine providence comes in and sorts out the rest. And you know, the sucky thing about life is that your reward doesn't always come from where you may see it coming, even if there's a plan. But if you serve your core purpose in a devotional way, then you end up being in an even higher rank, sometimes in an even completely different environment, purely because you were devotional in your practice towards making the world a better place. So I don't know if you guys have any comments on that. Alex, I'll start off with you. Do you have anything to say about that comment? Do you dispute? Do you agree?
No, I couldn't agree more. And I also think it is a hell of a competitive advantage when you discover that purpose. Because I think 80%, we love to say 80-20, and whether that's true or not, I don't know. But I think 80% of people are basically just showing up. I think it's like Gio said in the beginning, they're externally driven by need, not internally driven by purpose.
Yes, you would.
So
100%.
when you start working in that realm of purpose, you're now internally motivated. The world's not telling you what to do, you are telling yourself. And
Yeah.
you can see it in a person's energy and the way they carry themselves in that environment. They don't hesitate to give that extra 10%. It's
Yeah.
almost like it's easier for them because it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would add to that. I think it's spot on.
And for Gio, before I let you answer, I've witnessed you, for example, like when I first met Gio, went to go play a golf game and he invited some random guy to come play with us. I'm like, who's this OK Gio? He's like, no, this guy used to work for me before. It's when I like, add some value in his life, you know? But like either way, whether he's enjoying his job or not, he has this devotional dedication towards improving the people around him, making other people's lives. I'll use my pool as an example. Gio is quite skilled in terms of labor. And I'm the type of person who believes in like always paying for services. I don't like free stuff. One weekend, Gio just rocked up in my gate, changed my pool pump, nothing, fixed up my pool, nothing in return. You know what I'm saying? But it's a devotional practice. And like I said, the
Nice.
universe doesn't always give you back the reward where you put it in.
Sure.
But when you do it in such a way, then divine intervention comes in. Like you said, puts the hand in and then takes you where you need to be.
See,
Gio, any comments
I
there?
just want to add there, no good
Yeah.
deed goes unrewarded and no bad
Yeah.
deed goes unpunished. You just don't know
I,
where it's going to come from,
100%.
how it's going to look, but it definitely will.
100%. Gio, any comments on that? I mean, you practice it quite a lot. I mean, not to go too deep into that, I also see you're also a mentor on the Allan Grey Orbis Foundation. I see that you also are a part of one of the, tell you now, I think it's you're a member of chamber at the freight handling commerce, you're the secretary there. I mean, what are the returns of those? Surely there's nothing you gain from it, right? And what fulfills you to continue doing those duties?
look, what you're saying makes 100% sense there. I think after the whole discussion and what I mentioned earlier, it's super, super important to just to just emphasize that there's absolutely no substitute for hard work, dedication, commitment, and accountability. If you without that, you could have everything handed to you and still be a failure, right? So it's about the intrinsic motivation. You need to look within yourself to find what drives you and get to the next step, right? It's so to latch on to what you said earlier around the spirituality of that and being blessed. I've been fortunate to be blessed my whole life long. I've faced many challenges, and recently I faced one of the biggest challenges of my life that I overcome in a split second. And I never undervalued the experience. I took the time to go and sit and reflect on it and to understand it and to know what I could do differently.
Mm.
But I spent more time being grateful and saying
Oh,
thank you to
wow.
God for having
That's nice.
that.
In the dog time.
That that for me was where it sits, right? I spend those who know me understand and know that I'm a very religious person, and and I take that time to give back and share. And yes, there's a lot about my life that is not right, but that's the point of reflection and introspection, and that's the point of progress. We we come in imperfection and we are made perfect by God. And that's what we've got to settle for.
Sure.
And if ultimately you are humble, like Alex said earlier, so there's a prayer that I hold very dear to my heart recently after this event in my life, that over the past 4 or 5 weeks I've regularly started praying. It's called the Litany of Humility, and it prays for you to remain humble and to not look at other people's things and see what they've got and compare yourself, and it focuses on yourself to do the best that you can to give your heart and to always remember where you come from. So for me, I spend a lot of time in a lot of places, and I try to do the best that I can and add value, but it's like the old adage goes. When you build longer tables, not higher walls. That's an African proverb. When you are given a position, you are given a position and you are given access to things, and you are given the privilege to lead others.
Mm.
But you're not only given the privilege to lead others, you actually also given the privilege to have power to make decisions that helps others grow and be better.
Yeah.
100%.
And over, I would probably say, in the last, I would say 30 months of my life, I have struggled to have that opportunity. Before that, it was I was a champion for motivating for people because the environment was right, or the macro space was right to motivate for people to go and study, to through my own team build people to go and do management development programs, get into degrees, sit with them if they struggle with subjects to help them to get through the degrees in my leadership structure. Because I understood that that investment in those people at the end of the day would mean that I would have a lean, mean management structure that would mean that when we choose to conquer the world, when we want to scale, right, which a lot of leaders don't understand, for scalability, you need a good foundation. You
Yeah.
need good people.
Beautiful.
Else you're just gonna scale and you're gonna get that plane off the runway. It's gonna be in the air. You're gonna have to change engines mid-air, and at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you may just let that plane fall and suffer 300 victims, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what it's about for me. It's not just about access for me in terms of experience and understanding and learning, but it's also how do I enable that to become an opportunity for learning for others. And that's why for me, the mentorship, I mean, even with me and you today,
Yeah.
or in the very beginning of our relationship, when we started out and you said mentor me for like all of a month because you outgrew me in like 30 seconds.
No,
But
no, no, no ways.
but mentorship for me is something that comes at no charge. I'm not gonna go out there and say to people, give me $750 for my time or 1,000 rand or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of people that's really good at it, right? I do it very informally. I'm unaccredited, you know, and it's ultimately your choice to work with me or not. And all praise to the guys who are accredited, who takes people on the journeys. They have contributed to the person I am today, and I cannot undervalue who and what they are.
Mm.
But for me, that's where that's where the magic sits. It's to be able to look at someone's life and to go, even if it is a grain, as much as a grain of rice that I contributed to the character and the capability of where the person is and the way that the person makes the choices and the way the person shows up with the level of integrity and commitment and accountability they have. It's something to be proud of that you contributed to that little bit.
Yeah. It's a devotional practice, right?
Mm.
Like it adds to your overall sense of feeling alive. And with that being said, I'd just love to give the last 15, 20 minutes over to Alex. Alex, I don't know if you have any questions for Gio.
I do,
Um,
actually, I do.
yeah. So
But
I'd just love to hand over the mic to you to just bug his mastermind a bit there.
before I jump onto one of my questions, I just want to touch on mentorship because I think this is such a important subject. When you mentor people, I find you grow so much through helping them grow.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's something T said earlier about, the mentorship program, you don't receive anything from it. I wanted to jump in and just say, no, 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 no. You don't
Yeah.
understand. Like,
So I haven't been
mentorship's
on one,
like
right? So I have no context.
yeah, but you were a mentor. I mean, we're very good friends, but you've been a mentor to
Yeah.
me. Every time we
Yeah.
speak, I feel like it blows my brain out, and I have to go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, no, 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 no. There's so much more I could be doing,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I once heard a guy say, there's three people you should be paying attention to. Someone who's younger than you, who was better than you were, someone
Mm.
at the same age as you, who's killing it, and someone
Mm-hmm.
ahead of you who's living the kind of life that you would want to live.
100%.
And I think from a mentorship perspective, you have this relationship of having a mentor ahead of you, having someone who's on your level, and having a mentee. I think it's a great approach to have that.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, the one question I wanted to ask Gio, I'm 27. I'm now coming towards this end of my 20s, hitting the 30s. I
Scary
find,
parts.
I don't know, I feel pretty calm about it, but I know it's a number that scared a lot of people. When you look back to that time in your life, what advice would you have given yourself to navigate that period to the best of your ability?
Sure, we look. I speak of myself in my own experience. I was a difficult fellow to manage back then. So if I reflect on if I just reflect on the leaders at the time that had the misfortune of of having me as part of their team. I mean, the Donovans of the world and the Hunters of the world that now continue to be my friends.
Yeah.
You know, I have a deep sense of respect for them because at the time, I thought I could solve the problems of the world.
Mm,
At the time, I thought that I was proverbially smarter than most people in the room.
yeah.
I don't know, but with that being said, I had a deep sense of focus and and gratitude for where I was and a drive to achieve, But
Yeah.
if I have to go back and speak to that 27-year-old, I would speak to the principles of humility.
Mm,
I would speak to the principles of being patient with yourself and understanding that if you fail, that that's just life's way of growing you and tempering you, and forging you in fire. I would go back to that 27-year-old and speak to untraining the need to satisfy everyone else except God, the people who support me and myself. And because when you're in that young point in your life, you sort of want to be everything to everyone all the time.
mm,
And and that's entirely not possible. The other little bit of work I would do at that point is to craft that vision a little bit more definitively and to have a little bit more exposure. You are so true when you say that you have to punch out of your weight class to understand what your capabilities are, right? So I also dabble in a bit of sport shooting, and and when I go out on Saturdays and Sundays over the years, in the very first years of sport shooting, I realized if I squad with the weakest guys, I shoot like the weakest guys.
there we go.
If I squad with the strongest guys,
Yeah.
I start developing different strategies, different mindsets, different ways of handling the gun. You get to the level where you go, okay, these oaks are teaching me something.
Yeah.
So into my 27-year-old self, I would go and reach out to do more opportunities to go and find those realities, right? Because if you look at how narrow our focus is at that point in time, I mean, or at least my focus was very narrow at that point. If I take if I just look at the male social construct, for me, and what it means for me to be a male is that for the longest time, I thought that meant struggling on my journey alone. One. Two, I thought that that meant that I have to be a man and show all my mates that I'm a man. And if it gets tough, then I'm gonna be okay because I can do this. And you don't talk to other guys because you're just gonna look weak. You
Yeah.
know, you know what I mean? So you know
100%.
that stigma, that social construct for me governed those years. You know, the macho-ness, the wanting to really be the top of the food chain kind of guy and just and get on with it.
Yeah.
Now I realize that it's more important to build structures like this where we can actually talk, share, document, you know, and tell others from our learning experience because we, for some reason or another, right, we all think we're really special.
Yeah.
and and we are indeed. Our experiences are unique,
Yeah.
but 9 out of 10 times, a lot of the experiences that you have in your life, someone had a similar or like experience and is able to help you navigate that.
100%.
You know, it's just you just got to make sure that the network that you hold around you is a network that has that wellspring or that authority of experience, like I like to call it, to draw from to pass on to you. So that's what I would tell myself at 27. I know that sounds really weird, but
No, geez, you know what was amazing?
It's such a good one.
It's such good advice and it's so relatable. And I think, something you spoke about there, especially for men today, I think we're having more conversations now than we ever had about the challenges of being a man and the importance of being vulnerable. Because the truth is, I mean, I don't want to lie about statistics, but I believe the suicide rate for men has never been higher. And I think one of the reasons for that is because as men, we tend to isolate ourselves in terms of our struggles. So just having a space with your friends and your male friends just to say, like, this is the thing that I'm struggling with. What do you guys think? T, I can see you want to jump in there.
No, and I like that you mentioned the vulnerability point, right? Because I think both of you guys can attest to the fact that when I'm stuck, like every time I go to Gio's house, I literally write down questions that I want to ask him. Whether we're playing PlayStation, whether he's on the braai,
Yeah.
I'll just ask him questions. He's probably wondering, this okay has so many questions for me. I take the questions and I reflect on them. Even like with you, Alex. I mean, like, I remember before my first newspaper article came out, I
Yeah.
came to, I was like, Alex, you might be younger than me, but I just need you to correct me because we talk so much in my conciseness.
Yeah.
We sat on a call, you helped me out. But that all comes from the power of being vulnerable because you are acknowledging your weaknesses and then you're going to those people above you and below you to seek, like Jesus said, plugging in the holes in the cheese so that
Exactly.
you can become this amazing block of cheese that's, consolidated.
Yeah.
Gio?
yeah, look, those are all valid comments you make, and I think one important thing to add is this. So I go a lot of my discipline that I have in life to sort of get through things is religious based. You know, I sort of I started being an altar boy at 13, and if you know anything about that, you know that your hands need to be up. There's a process in mass. You need to be at a certain space at a certain time. And my family gave me that foundation in my faith. And if you listen to any talk that Denzel Washington does,
Mhm.
or whenever he speaks when he wins an award, he only ever has one message. And his message is put God first in whatever you do, and don't be ashamed of it. And that throughout the years is, yes, I've lost my way. There was a time at which I was going through something very difficult in my earlier 20s, between about 25 and 30, where I sort of stumbled and lost my way. But it's very, very important to keep yourself humble and ground based and make sure that whatever you believe, in whomever you believe, whatever denomination you are, whatever religious group you choose to subscribe to, or non-religious group that you choose to subscribe to, that you do whatever you do wholeheartedly and you give yourself fully.
100%.
And through those principles, you'll make sure that life will work and it will fix itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to add something like, it seems clear to me that whatever you choose to do, you give 110%, which I think is such a beautiful way to live life. And it's such a great philosophy. You know, I think today, I don't know, I think it's part of our generation. We struggle to commit to things. Maybe it's because of the nature of things changing as much as they do. And I guess because it's never seemed like there's more options today than there ever was before. I think with social media, you're always comparing what you have to what others have. And I guess that also leads to people not giving fully in relationships, in work, in even hobbies, whatever. So it's great. It's really refreshing to listen to that kind of story, Gio. It's very inspiring.
If I can just add one more thing to what you said, Alex, it's the rate of. So I struggled with this about 2 years ago, right? For me, it's the rate of information that hits you, the traffic. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it is.
You have a smartphone today. You can have, and I struggled with this because I try to keep abreast of everything. At some point, I was on MoneyWeb, I was on News 24, I was on Financial News,
Yeah.
I was on any app that you could gather under the sun because through my studies of corporate governance and strategic management, part of my role was to read integrated, part of the studies was to read integrated financial statements and try and forecast where companies were going, right? And if you just look at the amount of data that hits an individual on a daily basis today, it is so easy. If you just look at it from a professional level, I'm not talking about Instagram or Facebook or anything else, right?
Sure.
I'm talking about just the different apps, financial mails and stuff that you could log on to just give you business understanding in the sector in which you operate. It's traffic, guys. It's like galulis.
100%.
When a Walton's truck has a breakdown, right? My wife and I used to laugh because when I first moved to Joburg, I was a real idiot. I must admit it. When I first moved to Joburg, I thought a stationary truck at Galuli's was a Walton's vehicle. It's a big joke. Everyone's allowed to laugh at it. I'm happy. I know I was dumb. This was 10 years ago. But anyway, so when it's a lot of traffic that's hitting you, right?
Yeah.
And the most important thing that you can do for yourself and for others around you is to filter that traffic and to go, this doesn't add value. Like this app, I'm switching it off, non-functional.
Yep.
It talks about data. I mean, everyone talks about big data, but do they really know what it means? Do they really know the quality and integrity of the data? So if
100%.
the app gives you 55% data, just chuck the app because it's not adding any value.
Exactly.
And then go focus on the ones that's going to give you the data that you need, that's going to move the needle forward, that's
Right.
closer to the
100%.
80% and the 90s where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Love it.
Wow.
T.
And I mean, I just like what you spoke there about data, right? Because like I was talking to my dad the other day, and he was like, back in my day, we only had the newspaper to rely on to make future decisions, and it worked. It's not to say that the data didn't exist. It's just that the data wasn't collected. So if you live a life in such a way whereby you listen to your gut, you listen to your intuition, and you follow the newspaper philosophy, your vision will take you to where you need to go. It's just about you doing the tactical steps and doing the daily devotions that will allow for the universe to grant you what has been given into your mind and in your vision. So I like what you mentioned about the traffic, right? Because what makes traffic worse is a breakdown.
Yeah.
And why do trucks break down in traffic? Because this guy's consistently changing the gears, bro.
Yeah.
Consistently, and then the truck just.
Exactly.
So I think it's about just creating a highway for yourself where there's not too much traffic so that you don't have to change too many gears. And when you don't change too many gears, the rate of breakdown is less and just allows for you to flow. You can ride on neutral when when there's a downslope coming, you know, you don't have to speed because there's someone rushing you behind, etc, etc. You don't have to stop because there's a roadblock, etc. And I think if we can all adopt that philosophy, like I do today, you guys all know everything I'm doing is like highly centralized towards property.
Yeah.
If I was someone who was like reading a lot of data and stuff like that, by now I should have solved everything. But I've just stuck to it. I've just taken the newspaper philosophy, and like it's scary sometimes. Sometimes but I'm just gonna stick to it. And I'm going to do the devotional practice that will allow for me to get the outcome that the universe keeps on throwing this vision in my head. So that's what I pick up from Gio in what he said there. Yes, Alex.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about investing and things like that. Generally, the market rewards people who see things that others don't, right? And if you're just consuming the same information as everybody else and you're leaving no space for you to have independent thinking, you're not going to get a better result than anybody else, right? And when everyone else
100%.
will lose as well. So
Yeah.
I think don't take my investment advice, but I think
Like Gio said it earlier on. People want to do something for something. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Do something because you want to do it and you want to devote
Exactly.
yourself to it.
Exactly.
The outcome will come when divine providence decides to reward you. Just do it. Just do it because you want to do it. And I think, you know, that's the ultimate philosophy to life. If you're going to worry about the reward, yes, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But there's profit in the failure. There's profit in those lessons because the universe will then, divine providence, once again, will then pivot you to where your reward lies.
Spot on. Well said.
Any other questions from your side, Alex?
No, I think we have smashed it out of the park with this one, T.
Too much wisdom dropped. I'm listening to this like 4 or 5 times. I'm listening to it every day. I'm going to work next week.
Literally.
Gio, do you perhaps have any questions for us? Any closing remarks? Any comments?
I'm good. I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity for today, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been refreshing to listen to you guys. And like you said, Alex, everyone's a mentor to you, even the younger ones.
There we
So
go.
I think Tineiwo taught me this, not to undervalue the impact that you have in the lives of others. And it's like the FBI says, it's the unsub that's always watching. Eh? It's the unsuspecting person you don't know whose life you've had an impact in that you could have added just a nugget of knowledge and it would have just changed it. Yeah. But in short, just it's important to understand the importance of that commitment, the dedication, the accountability, and the importance of the development of a brand. I can't stress that enough. And the commitment to that brand and how you drive that brand. It's important not to go through life on autopilot because it's very easy to wake up in the morning, 8 o'clock, get to the office, report, drive through traffic, come back, feed your kids, cook, wash, and get through the proverbial things about your life. But you have to be intentional about this life to seek out that true purpose that you were created for, and it speaks to your earlier message. In understanding that purpose and doing everything that you possibly can to go and seek that purpose. And that may come at different times. For some people, it comes at 27.
Yeah.
For some guys, it comes at 60, like the Colonel with KFC. And for some guys, it comes at 37. You know,
Yeah.
Don't go through this journey of life trying to compare yourself to others. It's just not going to work. You're going to end up being bitter, and you're going to be like a truck stuck in mud, and you will not gain any traction. Do it at your own pace. I think I told you this the last time around. Go at your own pace. Do what you do. Love what you do, but continuously seek out to find that purpose. Because when you do what you do and you're happy doing it, that's when you really start. That's when the magic happens.
100%.
I'll say
100%.
I'll say.
And Gio, just a big thank you from us. I know generally on a Saturday by now you probably would have been on your like 3rd or 4th task. I know you wake up 7 a.m. doing stuff around your house. So thank you for the family and responsibility sacrifices that you've made to join and share some wisdom with us. It's very, very much appreciated. And then Alex, I'll hand over to you to close up for us there.
Guys, thank you so much. This is it's a privilege to sit and just listen to you guys speak and to learn from you both. Gio, this is definitely not the last time. I really enjoyed having you on the show. And to everybody listening, I hope you guys enjoyed it half as much as we did. Definitely not the last one. And yeah, we'll see you again. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a million, guys.